What if death doesn't mean the end? What if, like Schrödinger's cat, your soul exists in a state of both release and return, dead in one reality, alive in another, waiting for someone, something, to open the box? In 1935, a thought experiment involving a cat, a sealed box, and quantum uncertainty shook the world of physics. But what if it was never just about a cat? What if that box was a metaphor for the veil between this life and what lies beyond? Today, we'll explore a theory where your soul behaves like a quantum wave, collapsing into different timelines, living in parallel after physical death, guided by your last thought, your final frequency. This is not science fiction. This is the intersection of quantum mechanics, near-death experiences, and the sacred knowledge mystics have whispered for centuries. If you've ever felt the presence of someone who has passed, if you've ever dreamed of a reality where they were still alive, you may already be peeking into that parallel world. And now we open the box. It was never just a cat. In 1935, Erwin Schrödinger placed an imaginary feline inside a sealed box. A radioactive atom could decay or not. A vial of poison could break or remain whole. The cat, both dead and alive, until someone looked. But the truth is, this box has always existed, not on a laboratory table, but in us, in every hospital room where breath holds still, in every mother who waits for a heartbeat that never returns, in every soul that wonders, where did they go? Schrödinger wasn't speaking to physicists. He was whispering to eternity, because at the edge of death, something happens that no machine can measure. The body becomes quiet, but the field around it stirs. Physics calls it superposition. The soul calls it choice. We are all like that cat, held in a state between letting go and holding on, between the gravity of life and the gravity of what comes next. Einstein once said, "Reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one." But what if the illusion isn't the world? What if the illusion is the finality of death? A soul doesn't die. It shifts from waveform to memory, from body to field. Tesla believed that everything thought, light, love is vibration. He said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. If the soul is frequency, then death is simply a change of station, not silence, not disappearance, just tuning into a channel we can no longer hear, until we learn how to listen again. So perhaps Schrödinger's cat was never trapped. Perhaps the soul never was. Perhaps the real experiment is whether we will open the box, not to prove death exists, but to remember that something sacred always survives it. And that something is watching us, still alive, still loving, still waiting. For us to remember, sometimes the deepest truths aren't loud. They're the ones we feel in the quiet, like a heartbeat behind the veil. In quantum physics, there is a strange and beautiful truth. A particle behaves differently when it is observed. It collapses from a field of possibilities into a single reality. It becomes real only when someone sees it. They call it the observer effect. But what happens when the thing being observed is your soul? When we die, is there someone or something watching? In that final moment, when breath leaves the lungs, when the light behind the eyes begins to dim, does the soul wait for recognition? Not from the machines or the mourners, but from consciousness itself. Schrödinger's cat was never just about uncertainty. It was about potential, about how observation turns the infinite into the finite. And so we ask, if a soul passes without anyone there to witness, does it ever fully leave, or does it hover, undefined, waiting to be acknowledged? Carl Jung once wrote, "What we do not bring to consciousness appears in our lives as fate." Could the soul, too, remain suspended until it is brought to consciousness? We see this in dreams, in sudden chills, in the weight of a room that feels fuller than it should, as if something, Someone is still there, still in the box, still becoming real through us, not as memory, but as presence. Science sees consciousness as a byproduct of the brain, but mystics and those who have crossed close to death tell another story. They speak of a presence outside the body, a moment where they saw themselves, from above, from outside. Who, then, is the observer in that moment? If the soul is a waveform fluid, timeless, undefined, then it takes a witness to collapse it into a new state. Perhaps not a human, perhaps the divine, or the higher self, or the soul's future incarnation, watching its own end from a dimension beyond time. Some near-death experiencers describe being seen by light, not judged, not measured, just seen, with a love that feels like being remembered back into existence, like collapsing into truth. Tesla once hinted that the universe is alive, not made of things, but of conscious energy, a field that is not just around us, but aware of us. This energy does not measure with instruments, it measures with presence, and perhaps that presence is the true observer, the one that watches when no one else can, the one that helps the soul move on. And maybe we, too, are observers for each other. Maybe your grief, your memory, your sudden tears in the middle of the night are all part of collapsing their soul into the next state, helping them take shape again, not as flesh and bone, but as essence and light, because even after death, the soul longs to be seen, to be named, to be real. So tonight, if you feel someone beside you, even when the room is still, even when no one else believes, don't dismiss it. You might be the witness. You might be the reason their soul finds its way through the veil. You might be the one collapsing possibility into peace. And in doing so, you are not just watching them leave. You are calling them home. What if death is not a wall, but a doorway? And not just one doorway, but 1,000. Each one leading to a different version of what happens next. In quantum theory, there is a concept known as the many worlds interpretation. It suggests that every choice, every collapse of the wave function, creates not one reality, but many. Each version unfolds in its own dimension. Each possibility lives on separate, parallel, complete. If this is true for particles, could it also be true for souls? Maybe the moment we die, a fork appears. In one timeline, we fade into silence. In another, we awaken elsewhere. And in yet another, we are reborn, not as a stranger, but as ourselves, again, on a slightly different path. A new body, a different century, but the same thread of light carried forward, gently and eternally. Edgar Cayce described the soul's journey as cyclical, returning not out of punishment, but purpose. Each life a classroom, each death a graduation into something new. He spoke of soul memory, a deep inner knowing that crosses lives and forms. Have you ever felt it? That moment where a place feels too familiar, a person's face feels older than time, or a decision feels inevitable, like you've made it before. You may be walking the edge between timelines, living the echo of lives that branched from a single departure. In this multiverse of the dead, no soul is ever lost, only reoriented. Some awaken in spirit realms, others drift in dreamlike states, and some return, not because they must, but because something unfinished still calls. A love not yet fulfilled, a lesson not yet learned, a promise made long ago. In the silence between heartbeats, Carl Jung believed that time was not linear. He described synchronicities, moments that defied causality, as evidence of a deeper structure, an unseen pattern guiding the soul. In the multiverse, these synchronicities may be the fingerprints of your other lives, parallel versions of you reaching out through dreams, through déjà vu, through longing. You are not alone in your own soul. You are many. And here's a truth we rarely say out loud. Sometimes we don't grieve the person who died. We grieve the version of ourselves that died with them, the life that can never happen now, the words never spoken, the futures that branched away the moment they left. But maybe, just maybe, those futures still exist, not in fantasy, but in parallel, real in a way we cannot touch, but the soul still feels. So if you're dreaming of someone who has passed, if you feel them alive in another version of the world, you might not be imagining it. You might be remembering or reaching across the veil of one universe into another, where death did not divide you, where they're still waiting at the kitchen table, still laughing under the same moon, still walking beside you, just out of view. Because in the multiverse of the dead, love doesn't end. It just finds another door. Close your eyes. Now imagine this. You are not a body. You are a field, a vibration, a ripple of energy that stretches far beyond skin and bone. Physics tells us something astonishing. Energy cannot be created. It cannot be destroyed. It only changes form. A flame becomes heat. A wave becomes motion. A thought becomes a signal across the brain's quiet dark. And the soul is no different. What if who you are is not this shape, but the force that moves through it, not the candle, but the fire, not the glass, but the light? This is the quantum soul, a consciousness not trapped inside a body, but interfacing with it like radio waves tuning into a station. The body dies, but the frequency continues. You continue. Nikola Tesla once said, "My brain is only a receiver." In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. He wasn't speaking poetically. He meant it literally. He believed the human being was a conduit for something vast, something timeless, a signal broadcast from the heart of creation. And when we die, the receiver shuts down. But the signal doesn't stop. It simply finds another form, another vessel, another space in which to sing its song. This is why, sometimes, you dream in places you've never been. Why a stranger's voice makes your skin ripple with memory. Why a sudden wave of emotion hits you without cause. You're not just a person. You're an intersection of timelines, energies, and echoes, a pattern written in vibration. And vibration, like music, never truly ends. It fades. It reverberates. It travels into someone else's silence. In the study of quantum entanglement, two particles once linked remain connected, no matter how far apart they drift. Touch one, and the other reacts instantly, across galaxies, across time. Now imagine this. What if your soul is entangled with others? What if death doesn't sever that connection, but activates it? What if the grief you feel is not absence, but transmission, a vibration, still moving, still loving, still reaching for you in the dark? Edgar Cayce spoke often of the light body, a form we take when we leave this plane, not made of flesh, but frequency. He said that love, thought, and intention all carry weight. Not physical weight, but energetic density. That means everything you've ever felt, every truth you've whispered into your pillow, every heartbreak and hope, it all still exists, floating, moving, returning. So if you're listening now, wondering if your soul is more than this life, it is. If you're asking where your loved one has gone, they haven't left. They've transformed. They are light in another form, a vibration that speaks in dreams, in chills, in moments of stillness when the air feels heavy with meaning, and you are still entangled with them, across dimensions, across timelines, across the quiet threshold of death itself. Because energy never dies, and neither does love. It only changes its voice until we remember how to hear it again. There's a moment after someone dies, when the world doesn't know how to adjust. Their name still exists on mail. Their scent still lingers in the hallway. Their voice still echoes when the house creaks just right. And you begin to exist in two places at once. One part of you knows they're gone. The rituals have been done. The words "I'm so sorry" have been said. But another part doesn't agree. You wake up reaching for them. You hear their laugh in the crowd. You turn your head instinctively, expecting them to walk in. It feels impossible, this duality, like you're standing on a threshold. Between was and still is. In quantum mechanics, this state is called superposition. A particle can be in multiple states at once until observed. It is both here and not here, spinning and still, present and absent. And this is what grief feels like. Not just absence, but contradiction. A person is gone, but they're still everywhere. The heart does not let go in straight lines. It folds reality into emotion. So, the person who died, they don't fully leave. They live in memories, yes, but also in instincts, in habits, in the quiet language of your nervous system. You still flinch when the door opens just in case it's them. You still pause before deleting their number. You still speak to them when no one is around. And maybe they still hear you. Carl Jung once said, "The unconscious is timeless." Perhaps the dead live in that timeless space, in the psyche that doesn't obey clocks, in the dream where past and present merge. So when you feel them near, you are not imagining. You are participating in their continued existence. You are the observer, collapsing their waveform into presence. In this way, we are more powerful than we realize. We do not only grieve the dead, we help them remain. We keep their energy alive by remembering, by loving, by refusing to reduce them to silence. Every time you say their name, every time your chest aches at a song, every time you light a candle or whisper a prayer, you bring them into this moment, not just emotionally, but energetically. In ancient traditions, this was sacred. Altars, photos, candles in the window. These weren't symbols of sorrow. They were portals, places where the veil thinned, where superposition became communion. The dead were not gone. They were simply in another state, waiting to be brought near by love. Even now, you may feel them in your sleep. They arrive in dreams, not to say goodbye, but to say, "I'm still here," because grief is not just the cost of love. It is its extension. It is the soul's refusal to let go of what is sacred. So if you feel torn between letting go and holding on, you are not broken. You are in superposition, still learning how to be both, alive in this world and connected to the next. Somewhere between memory and miracle, they remain, not just because they existed, but because you still believe they do. There is a moment, right after the final breath, when everything becomes quiet, but it's not the silence of an ending. It's the silence of a question, a sacred pause, before the soul decides where to go next. In quantum physics, when a wave of probability is observed, it collapses from infinite outcomes to one. From could be, to is. It's not random, it's responsive, and perhaps the soul does something similar. Imagine this: at the moment of death, your soul is not pulled. It is not judged. It is not sent. It chooses, not with words, but with frequency, with resonance, with everything it has ever become. Like a tuning fork struck by eternity, your soul vibrates at the sum total of your experiences, your loves, your regrets, your truth. And that vibration collapses the wave. You don't go to heaven, you tune into it, or another life, or a liminal space in between. Wherever you match, you arrive. This is not fate, it's not a reward or punishment. It's physics, and it's love. Edgar Cayce described this as the soul finding its proper level. He saw death not as a leap into the unknown, but a slide into a dimension that mirrors your inner state. If your life was steeped in fear, your soul may linger in confusion. If your heart held light, you may wake into peace. The collapse isn't arbitrary. It's you, choosing your next now. Have you ever felt that certain people carry a heaviness, like they've lived many lives, each layered inside them like stone and silk, or that others radiate light, as if they've just returned from somewhere divine? It may be because they did not fall into this life. They selected it. Their soul collapsed a wave into this body, this time, this chance, and maybe you did too. The ancient Egyptians believed in Ka, the energetic double that lingers after death. Watching, waiting, guiding, they knew that what comes next depends not on what you did, but on who you became. So ask yourself, if your soul had to collapse into a new life tonight, based on the music it's humming right now, where would it land? Would it find peace or another lesson? Would it awaken in light or wander in shadow? This is not meant to scare you. It's meant to remind you that right now, this moment, this breath is part of that wave. You are shaping your next collapse by the choices you make today, by what you love, by what you forgive, by what you remember. And when your time comes, when the breath leaves gently and the veil lifts like morning mist, you will not be lost. You will be led by the very frequency of your soul to the place where you already belong. The soul does not fear the dark. It collapses the wave into a new dawn, and in that light, you will rise again. What if you didn't live only once? What if you're not even living just one version of yourself right now? What if, beyond this moment, beyond this name and face you wear, there are other yous moving, breathing, remembering, in timelines you can no longer see? The veil between worlds is thinner than we think. We imagine death as a single crossing, a one-way journey, but the soul is not bound to one path. It branches, it multiplies, it echoes, not in time, but in possibility. Just as light can behave as both particle and wave, just as Schrödinger's cat was both dead and alive until observed, your soul, too, may exist in superposition across dimensions. You are this version of yourself, but also another, and the part of you that aches without explanation, that grieves a loss you never lived, that dreams in languages you never learned, maybe feeling the weight of those other selves. In quantum theory, they call this the many worlds interpretation. Every decision you've made, every moment you turned left instead of right, said yes instead of no, may have birthed a parallel version of you, a soul fragment, living out the path you didn't choose, not metaphorically, but truly, vibrationally, energetically. Each version of you is real, just beyond reach. Unless something shifts, Carl Jung hinted at this when he spoke of the self, not the ego, but the totality of all you are, across shadow and light, across past and future. The self is not linear, it is simultaneous. So when you experience déjà vu, or feel a connection to a place you've never been, or love someone as if from another life, you may be brushing up against yourself in another form. And here's the secret no one tells you. Death may not end this branching. It may magnify it. When the soul leaves the body, it is no longer confined by biology or chronology. It becomes again what it always was, a field of potential, a light unfolding in many directions. Some of these paths return to earth. Some enter spiritual realms. Some walk the edge of both. You could be guiding someone right now from a life you haven't yet lived. You could be mourning a soul in this world who is holding you in another. In some dreams, you are a child again. In others, you are someone else entirely. You fly, you fall. You speak truths you don't remember learning. These aren't just dreams. They're glimpses, echoes from the parallel corridors of your own soul. And sometimes, when the veil thins at dusk, or between waking and sleep, you might feel a flicker of another version of you, walking beside you, not as a ghost, but as a traveler on a parallel path, you don't need to find them. You are them. So what does this mean for your grief? For your soul's evolution? It means that healing in one version of you may ripple into all the others, that every time you choose love, every time you forgive, every time you awaken all of you, across dimensions, across lifetimes, across realities where you never truly died. Because the soul is not a single story. It's a library, a constellation, a song sung in many voices at once. And when you listen closely, in silence, in sorrow, in surrender, you may hear them, all of you, still alive, still unfolding, still returning home. You are not behind or ahead. You are all of it, now, forever. What if the box was never sealed from the outside? What if you were never trapped? What if, all along, you were holding the key? We speak of Schrödinger's cat as a prisoner of uncertainty, locked in a paradox, alive and dead, seen and unseen, waiting for someone, an external observer, to open the lid. But here is the truth we've whispered through science, dreams, and dying breaths. The soul is not waiting for someone else to look. It's waiting for you to remember. At the heart of every death, every departure, every dimension is a choice, not a loud one, not one made with words, but a sacred inner choice. The choice to awaken, to become conscious, to open the box. From the inside, we live so much of life in closed spaces, trapped in fears, in timelines, in old identities we mistake for who we are. But the soul knows none of it is the final story, not grief, not failure, not death. They are states, not verdicts, and from every state there is a doorway. Carl Jung once said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it." Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. This is the soul's quiet liberation. Not escape, but surrender, not forcing the box open, but realizing there was never a box at all. Only a moment, only a veil, only a lesson, asking to be loved. Tesla saw the universe as a symphony of energy. Cayce saw life and death as phases of remembering. Einstein saw time as an illusion, a stubborn one, but still an illusion. And you are the observer and the observed, the waveform and the particle, the one who forgets and the one who finally remembers. So if you felt stuck in the in-between, not quite alive, not quite gone, know this: you are in a sacred phase. You are collapsing the wave. You are choosing who you become again, and the soul you miss, the one you still cry for, pray for, long for. They are not locked away. They are not waiting for the veil to lift. They are already beside you, within you, echoing through the love you still feel, because they made the same choice, to stay close, to remain present, to open their own box from the inside and reach for you through the light. In the end, there is no death. There is only transition, only resonance, only the deep remembering that you were never separate, not from them, not from yourself, not from the source of all light. So breathe, close your eyes, and when you're ready, open the box from the inside, somewhere beyond time. They're already holding your hand, not because they never left, but because, in truth, you never did. If this journey stirred something within you, a memory you couldn't name, a feeling you couldn't explain, a truth you didn't know you were waiting for, then you're not alone. Maybe this wasn't just a video. Maybe it was a moment your soul had been asking for, a doorway, a remembrance, a return. If someone you love has passed, speak to them tonight, not with fear, but with presence. They're not as far as you think, and if your heart feels seen in these words, stay with us. This channel is a space where science meets the soul, where death is not the end, but the beginning of a deeper knowing. Subscribe if you feel called. Share this with someone who still whispers to the ones they've lost. And in the comments below, tell us, what would you say if they could still hear you now? You never know who might be listening.